Well, good evening, everyone. I have the honor of sharing with you tonight a few things that I learned about Eve as a result of my study and my assignment from Sister Houston. And it's coming from the perspective of Eve being the first female on the earth. And so these are not by any means an exhaustive list of firsts for Eve, but these are some that really stood out for me during my study. So here we go. Eve's name, first of all, means life or living, and she is often called the mother of all living. And so Eve was the first woman ever to be created by God from the rib of a man. No natural childbirth, no C-section. She came straight from the rib of Adam. Eve was the first woman ever created with no biological father, no biological mother. So she was the first and only motherless woman. No siblings, which means no brothers, no sisters, just Eve. She also was the first woman to wake up naked with a strange man staring at her, declaring that she was bone of his bone and flesh of his flesh, and he decided to call her woman. So she instantly became a wife. She instantly became Adam's wife. So Sister Houston, Eve was the first woman to get married at first sight. No dating, no chatting, no premarital counseling, no ready to love contestant. She was the first woman to get married at first sight. She woke up and she immediately became Adam's wife. She was also the first woman, Dr. Clark, to open her mouth and speak without being taught how to speak or how to talk or how to communicate. She came out talking. She came out communicating effectively with her husband and others, as we know. She also was the first woman to walk around outside in the garden naked and unashamed. And for those who are politically involved, politically savvy, however you want to say it, she was the first woman to be tempted, deceived, tricked, whatever term you want to use. But she was also the first woman, in my opinion, to believe a big lie. She was also the first person to sin and disobey God and ultimately suffer the consequences of her actions. And she was the first woman to try to hide herself. So I say she was the first seamstress, because she and Adam sewed fig leaves together after they disobeyed God to try to hide themselves in the garden. And Eve was also the first woman to blame someone else for her poor choice, for her poor decision. She was the first person to experience the war that goes on between the spirit and the flesh. She and Adam have been walking around in the garden naked and unashamed, and they went from doing that to being covered up and ashamed. They went from being able to walk around with freedom and liberty to feeling guilty and hiding. And they went from being carefree and worry-free to being fearful and afraid. Eve was also the first woman to have a custom-made outfit directly from God. So even though God was upset with her and Adam because of their disobedience, they still experienced his protection and his provision. And God made them an outfit from, some say, animal skin. And so that's why I say she was the first woman to ever wear a custom-made outfit. She was also the first woman to be punished by God for her disobedience to him. And she was the first woman to be evicted from her home. Prior to the fall, she was walking around in paradise in the Garden of Eden, enjoying God in the cool of the day. But now she's being evicted from her home. And she was the first to experience the shame, the feeling of shame and guilt and fear. She was also the first woman who learned how to live off the land. She learned how to be a gardener after being evicted from the Garden of Eden. First, to acknowledge the miracle working power of God. In Genesis 4:1, she declared, with the help of the Lord, I have brought forth a son. So Eve was the first person to give birth to a child, the first mother in the universe. There was no pain medicine. There was no epidural. There was no midwife. There was no doctor. So Eve was the first woman to experience the pain of giving childbirth. And just as she was the first to experience the birth of a child, she also was the first to experience the loss of a child, the murder of a child that was committed by her own son, Cain. Think about that for a moment. Her first son, Cain, murdered his brother, Abel. As a result, she suffered the loss of two sons, one to death and one to abandonment, because after Cain killed Abel, God banished Cain from their home, from the land where they had been all living together. Eve had no grief support system. She had no Hadassah ministry. She had no girlfriend. She had no mother to call. She had no sister to call. It was just her and Adam. She had no one to walk through that period of mourning and grief with her. Again, it was just her and Adam. But in all these things, the hand of God was all over Eve's life. The plan of God was not aborted because she made one bad decision, one poor choice. As a result of this study, I see Eve in a totally different light. I see Eve as an overcomer, not a failure. I see Eve as a trailblazer, a leader, not a follower. I see Eve as a victorious woman, not a victim of her circumstances. I see her as a go-getter. I see her not as a quitter. I see her as a survivor who overcame adversity and other obstacles in her life. I see Eve as a woman created by God for his purpose and for his glory. And as more than anything, I see the hand of God all over Eve's life. And as women of God, that's what I see in our lives. I see the hand of God all over our lives. No matter the test, no matter the trial, the temptation, the losses, remember that God's hand is upon your life. No matter the struggles, the setbacks, the poor choices, the bad decisions, God's hand is upon your life. Keep trusting, keep believing, keep seeking, keep pressing, keep praying, because God's hand is all over your life. God's hand is upon your life. And the church said, Amen.